Hello, and welcome to another episode of our StaTech Industry Modpack playthrough. And yes, I know it's been, well, a bit longer than just a little while. So for that, I do apologize. But without further ado, we have a lot of stuff to dive into. And so, let's, hop into another episode. So I may have messed up the intro there a little bit. Sorry. Whenever I'm, away for a couple weeks, my wording kind of gets reset, and then it's like, oh, I gotta find what the intro was again. I gotta find what the outro was. Anyways, if it wasn't apparent just due to the large amounts of stuff all over the base, we have made quite some progress in between episodes. Obviously, having a couple weeks, I think, at this point in between videos. Which is not obviously ideal for me, but, stuff happens. And if you're interested to read about, what exactly went on in that week, you're free to go to the community section of the channel. And there I've made it a couple posts about, just essentially what happened. So, diving on into the episode and more so technicalities of the episode, you may hear that I'm a little stopped up as far as sinuses go, and I think that's just due to the leaf mold that is beginning to come into effect here in the fall. So on that note, I do apologize for any skipping, stopping, jumping around that may happen in the video. Just know it's me having to pause so I can take care of myself, essentially. So yeah, a lot of stuff has happened in between episodes. I believe at the end of the last episode we were probably just getting into digital. I think this is what we were kind of trying to do, is get into the ME drive from the turbo machine hole. And since then, obviously, we've had a bit more time to expand. So, yeah, anyways, sorry for the interruptions. Long story short, a lot of stuff has happened in between episodes, and we're not going to be going over all the details, all the minors, ins and outs, and all that kind of stuff. We're just going to be reviewing the system and the playthrough as a whole so far, and basically where we're heading from here. So I have since destroyed all of the storage in this room, which I think was a good idea, because I just quite frankly don't think that this was going to be enough room as a whole for all the drawers we were going to need. So I built an individual storage unit type structure, and I am moving into using Applied Energistics 2 now, so we're slowly making the transition from Tom Simple Storage to Applied Energistics 2, which, of course, if you've used Tom Simple Storage before and Applied Energistics, you'll know they do play very well together. So a lot of the automation over here with all these machines are still on Tom's. And then basically everything over here in the white building, this is going to be Applied Energistics setup. Using channels. P2P tunnels in this Modpack are really useful, because I believe they've doubled all of the default Applied Energistics 2 limits. So the Fluix ME glass cable can hold 16 channels, the P2P channels can hold 64, and the controller on each side can also hold 64 channels, which is really nice, because obviously this kind of takes up a lot of channels using all the different pattern providers in conjunction. So, and then over here we have like auto stocking type options, which we'll get into exactly how I'm doing that. Well, hell, we might as well do it now. So basically what I'm doing for auto stocking is two options. One, the thing you just saw with Applied Energistics 2, which we'll explain in a minute. And two is this kind of complicated contraption over here. Now, as a whole, these pretty much all work the same way, and that is, at the end of the setups, we have a drawer that has the item or the gear or whatever it is that's being produced. So in this case, it is gears. In this case, it's rotors. In this case, it's wiring. So it essentially holds the item that I'm trying to produce and have on auto production. And then we have a bunch of level emitters sent out from that sends redstone links over to the initial drawers, which essentially just tells it when to fire materials and how much to fire. From that, they just go into a configurable chest or into the respective machines, right? So this just goes into a compressor and then into a wire mill. And then, yeah, just straight on over. The way the level emitters work is by putting an item in, telling it how much, and telling it less or more. So all fairly simple, but this did take me quite a bit of time to figure out all the different mod pieces that work together in order to make this functionable and accurate on a 100% scale. So just to name the most important blocks here, you're going to have the brass belt funnel, which is going to allow you to limit the amount of number that you can send into the system, and the configurable chest, which also allows you to limit based on number amounts. Those two things, and then limiting the number in the machine, like how many can actually be held, are going to be your biggest friends when it comes to automating a lot of the smaller parts, because a lot of the smaller parts can get complicated because they have a lot of different parts that go into them, but they're still relatively simple as they require minimal amount of machine setups, but maximum amount of diversification. So for example, we need, in order to make a gear, you need 8 steel plates and 1 ring. So in order to do that, you kind of have to get the happy medium of sending 8 plates here while only sending 1, through here. So anyways, this isn't our auto crafting section. This is more of like our auto stocking section. So it does auto craft, but it auto crafts and it keeps up the desired number. So here, if I was to drop this iron below 54 actually, we'll see that the process kicks back on. So here we have iron pop out, go in, depot, and off it goes. So one key feature I've noticed with this mod pack is you're always going to want to build more room, more, because you're going to need it. Over here, we're going to have our entire setup for essentially fluid processing. And this is kind of the biggest section here, or not actually doing anything. But as you can see, this whole building is pretty much filled up, and the generalistic idea of this building and pretty much all that it does is it takes stainless steel drills, which you can, I guess, make on your own because I don't have it over here. So yes, the stainless steel drills, essentially you can put them into an old drilling rig and get shale oil, get shale oil, which will give you these 3 components here: naphtha, crude oil, and helium. And then, of course, you have to take that and do various things with it. Add it to some hydrogen to get rid of the sulfuric aspect of it. Then add some steam to it to make it steam cracked. Then throw it back into a distillation tower. And you get all these different fluids here. Some of them are liquids, some of them are gases. But essentially, you need all of these fluids to move forward. So we built this entire building essentially just for taking care of that. So we'll have the shale oil come out, go into a distillation, process down, reprocess down into diesel over here. This is essentially what this little mini section does, is turn it into diesel. And then back over here, we have the distillation tower that actually takes in the shale oil, or the sulfuric naphtha, and changes it into the various fluids. Then we have boosted diesel being made as well by combining ethanol and something else, acrylic acid, right? To get us the diethyl ether, and of course we already have diesel. And then basically we're just continuing this trend. So over here we have the stearine butadiene rubber that you need to get from the various fluids, and then we also have the polyvinyl chloride. So essentially, this mod pack, when you get into the digital age, becomes a fluid management simulation game, essentially. Because you just get a ton of them, and you really have to work out the logistics of it all. And so for things like that, I do highly recommend, and in most mod packs, I recommend this. Build yourself more space rather than less, because you'll probably end up needing it. And even if you don't, you can fill it in with nonsense. So yeah, having an area or a section in this mod pack where you can just deal with the fluids is really going to be beneficial for you. And up top here, you'll probably have noticed that we have just a ton of these copper tanks, and they're all pretty much doing the exact same thing, and that is holding one fluid or another for various amounts of backup. Obviously, we're very backed up on boosted diesel, but kind of want to get all these other things fully automated and fully used up, and then boosted diesel should continuously be produced, because all the rest of these will be being used, I guess is the best way to describe it. So yeah, there's a lot of fluid management within this mod pack, and once you get to that stage, trust me, it's just going to be easier if you add more rather than less. Now that being said, a lot of this mod pack has been processing materials down, processing ores, processing fluids, just processing in machines. On that note, I think it's very important for us to have as much automation and auto crafting and auto stocking as possible moving into the future, because obviously a lot of the components end up getting built off of other components, and then it just keeps going. Essentially, you build small components in the beginning, and then those small components turn into elaborate recipes, which is you know, kind of the nice thing of the automation and all that. So what I would recommend is doing something similar to what I have here in the Applied Energistics 2 system. So we have the auto stocking using create and all that kind of stuff over there. We also have auto stocking here using the ME interfaces. Now the way this works is you can put a material, we'll just use dirt as an example. Put a material on the top, and it's going to auto stock it on the bottom. You can also set the amount, which only goes up to 64, but if I only wanted it to hold 32, there's that. Back up, there's that. And I'm not sure, I don't think you can increase this number, right? Fuzzy in a crafting, yeah. So anyways, if you put a crafting card into the ME interface, it will automatically try to craft it if you have the recipe available. So here we have motors. Here we have 64 motors. So if I come into our Applied Energistics system, say motor, what's something that uses a motor? A pump, because I don't want to use too many motors, and if I just grab them out, it's gonna. All right, so there's 9 motors being made, and if I run over here real quick, you can see they're being auto produced and immediately put right back into the ME interface, or recrafted. So this is really important, because you end up getting into a point where motors are no longer useful, but you need the motor to make the pump, to make the large pump, to make the, you know, next piece or whatever, the boss crusher. So you end up needing, you know, 3 motors here plus another 6 motors for the main piece. So you end up needing these, what I call mid-tier complicated recipes, essentially. So a motor isn't too bad. It's got just a lot of smaller pieces that combine in order to make. So the way that I do my auto crafting and auto stocking is pretty simple. We're going to remove the dirt from there. I try to do complex things in the complex machine and simple things with the simple machines. So what I mean by that is Applied Energistics is going to be taken care of, and ignore some of these simpler recipes. This is just sheer laziness. But essentially they should all look kind of like this, where it's a more complex recipe, right? Digital circuits, certainly not an easy thing to just sort of slap together real quick. And certainly not an easy thing to try and send into an assembler, like one of these, 4 of these, 2 of these, 1 of those type things, right? So for the complicated recipes, I recommend using Applied Energistics because, well, they're complicated and it can handle complication simplistically. That being said, things like the plates here, the curved plate, all these rods, they really shouldn't be in this system, I don't believe. Where the strengths of each system lie, so this auto crafting and auto stocking system versus the other one, which is, you know, over here, is really quite simple to understand and quite easy to determine which one you should be using for what. So the way that I do it is, if it's complex, we use it over here. If it's simple, we use it over there. The reason for that is because if I try to use, say I use some motors in a craft, I use 32 of them, boom, gone. Okay, well now this is crafting motors over there, but now I'm also out of digital circuits. Okay, well now it needs to start crafting digital circuits, but it can't really do that because this pattern provider has both the pattern for crafting analog circuits and crafting the motors. And this is just going to happen, you know, unless you use extreme amounts of auto crafting and extreme amounts of setup, which obviously we kind of have here and we have been doing. It's going to be really difficult to ensure that this auto crafting system can continuously do every single piece at once. So it can't do motors plus digital circuits plus electronic circuits all at once. It's just not going to work. It's going to do one, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next. Now, for auto stocking, this is fantastic. It means I can come in here, make my complex machines or whatever, go set up, go build, go do what I need to do with them, and then by the time I come back, most of the time, they're all pretty well stocked. We must be running low on something with the electronic circuit, and that's probably what it's passing through over here. Yeah, some more digital circuit boards. So it's really nice for that fact, but it's not extremely quick. And they kind of tell you about this in the quest book. They say, you know, beware using auto crafting from Applied Energistics because it's not fast and it does overlap things, and you can typically do so many processes at once. However, with our other setup, they are completely independent setups. So for example, the gear setup is never going to run into our rotor setup over here. We're never going to have a problem where we can't make rotors because we're currently making gears, because everything is completely independent. This whole machine setup is non-connected to this one other than power and steam. But at this point, we pretty much have infinite of those, and I'll explain that here in just a minute. But yeah, and you'll see we actually already have rods over here as well that are auto stocked up. But I was testing the E2 system, and that's why you'll also see them over there. So some things are still a work in progress, as is pretty apparent and obvious due to the fact that this doesn't have any kind of building or really any beautification to it whatsoever. Now, you can also do things like the Applied Energistics processors in this kind of setup, which I think, again, is beneficial because you'll probably be using these pretty often, and you don't want to clog up your E2 AutoCraft system with something that you're crafting too often. So the way that I do it and the way that I see it, if it's simple and you need a lot of it, do a setup kind of like this, to where it's independent. It's not going to constantly be running through your system, right? Using your crafting CPU and all that kind of stuff. If it's complex and requires a lot of different little pieces or fluids perhaps, then use the Applied Energistics 2 system. So yeah, that's pretty much my recommendations. If you're playing this and you want to get into Magic, Spectrum is a pretty good Magic mod that does give you a lot of utilities. It's not just like, oh, I can cast a fireball and that's really cool. It does give you a lot of utilities by means of like different machines to use. So a different kind of redstone timer, which I prefer the Spectrum redstone timer actually. It's a really, really beautiful thing, and I'm not going to go into everything about it right now, but just trust me, it is nice. The diesel jetpack, what I like to do is keep a little bronze tank kind of filled with creosote just somewhere, so that way I can run up and refill it. And of course, the jetpack does have different flight speeds based on the fuel you put in. So I found creosote to really be the most comfortable as far as being quick without being deadly. If you were to put boosted diesel in this thing, you fly way too fast and you use fuel extremely quickly. So alright, so that's Applied Energistics 2 and our auto crafting setup and my recommendations for it. Another thing is that you're going to want to use the P2P tunnels, which I briefly touched on, but essentially they allow you to carry many channels without having to use the dense smart cable. And I'm not going to go into exactly how they work because I think you can go find a tutorial pretty easily on this, especially with how long Applied Energistics has been out. But yeah, it does allow us to have, you know, a whole setup over here of 64 channels, a whole setup, oh, excuse me, over here of 64 channels. And you can see down in there, we basically just have one dense smart cable instead of having to run an entire slew of them from the base over there. So if we come down here, you can see it's just this one little piece, and then we're kind of branching off for each direction. So, oh, it's getting nighttime. Go ahead and take a snooze. The next portion that we're going to be diving into in this Modpack playthrough, the next large area that I'm going to be trying to accomplish is going to be set up over here. And let's take this fancy little train that I made, which is no part of progression within this Modpack as far as requirements go, but it is really fun to be able to create trains, so, you know, here we are. So if we hop up in here, hop up on the seat, right-click the controls, we can depart the station, and this is currently the only station I have, so, you know, bear with me. Stop here. And this is going to be, if you couldn't tell, for our space age type materials and progress, which I think is really nifty. It's kind of like an observation deck or an observation tower. And then we're going to have this, if I can remember, I'm going to put the picture up now. But it's basically just going to be a huge spaceship launching pad zone in front of here, which is where we're going to launch all of our spaceships, obviously. If we come back into the quest book, as soon as I land here, oh, there we are. You'll notice this whole section over here is grayed out, and that's because I've not even started on it. I haven't made the oxygen loader, the fuel refinery, nothing dealing with space age stuff. Because I thought, you know what, it kind of feels like a whole different chapter within the mod pack. We did all the digital stuff, and I'm trying to keep things kind of clumped together in means of how we progress. So in the next episode, we'll probably do space age stuff and maybe getting into, you know, processing units and this kind of stuff over here with the boss crusher, and really diving into the larger machines and the ones that have even more complication. That being said, this mod pack playthrough has kind of taken a turn, as, you know, in the beginning we were very much on it with, hey, here's my progress, here's everything that I'm doing and setting up, to whereas now it's more of a show and tell and a, hey, look at my system, you can copy it, if you need any questions about it, I don't mind answering, yada yada yada. Now, I think I prefer the latter, honestly, because it doesn't require me to basically teach everyone every single mod, which there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes I just want to play the game and be like, hey, you know, this is what I did. And I know a lot of you can understand and respect that. So let me know if you do have any questions about anything that I've shown, and I will do my best to go back through and explain it. Now, one main reason I wanted to get into Applied Energistics 2 is specifically for the auto crafting of the drills. Now, we only have one of these set up, but we do have an automation set up for bronze drills, which is obviously hugely beneficial because it means we have resources coming in infinitely. This is important because it means we can begin to do whatever we want to or need to with those resources. So let's see here. Where is... oh, is it on the other side? Yeah, there it is. So we have an export bus essentially set with bronze drills and a crafting card that leads into the item input hatch. And this will essentially just craft bronze drills. Anytime one breaks, it's going to send another one into it. Which obviously, like I said, is pretty good because it means that all of our coal and iron and redstone and gold and all that stuff is being produced at an infinite rate. Not a very fast rate because I still have it set up on the steam quarry instead of moving the bronze drills over to the electric quarry, because you can indeed use the bronze drills on an electric quarry and have the benefits of overclocking and all that kind of stuff. But for the sake of consistency and persistency, I think using the steam quarry for the bronze drills is perfectly fine. Now, a couple pointers on logistics, because obviously I have a pretty spread out base, and I wouldn't assume that everyone would have this kind of spread out base. Perhaps some of you are building in the void. Perhaps some of you are building as compact as possible and as efficiently as possible. But for those of you like me that are building a very large base with some glaringly obvious logistical issues, here are a couple of my tips on what to do and what works the best for solving what seemingly could be a simple solution or a simple problem. Sorry. So 2 things. 1, less is more. So the less you have to move around, the better, which I think we can all agree with. And in that principle, we can use these entangled tanks to move steam, which if you remember, steam is power. So what I recommend is taking an entangled tank, throwing some steam into it, and now you have portable power. How does this work? Well, it's pretty simple. If you put steam into a turbine, it provides power, correct? So you take your entangled tank, you can set it up wherever you want, then just drop down a couple of steam turbines, pull from the tank, which is obviously an ender tank essentially, and then you have power wherever you want in your base. So this is the first form of portable power that I've really found that works extremely well. And as long as you have your advanced steam boiler or your large advanced steam boiler, whatever, pretty much set up to auto, fill and continuously run, then you're good to go. And you can have that power everywhere. I don't have to run the steam cables like what you saw down below here, like all these anymore, because now I can use the entangled tanks. And obviously getting to the entangled tanks takes a little bit of time, but they're not nearly as difficult as what one may believe. So if we take a look here at the entangled tank, it really just takes Eye of Ender and blaze rods, as well as some cauldrons, blocks of gold. All that stuff should be fairly simple if you've gotten into villagers. I know I've showcased this before, but again, a bit of time has passed in between episodes, so you can actually buy ender pearls here from the cleric. And if you come over here to the hunting post, you can buy blaze rods from the hunter. Now, I think he has to be, it's not master, but maybe it's the one before master level in order to unlock it. But yeah, hugely beneficial because I'm not having to constantly go and kill blazes or endermen or any of that kind of stuff. Oh man, I don't know how much of that I was muted for. So, okay, well, I hope I wasn't muted for too much. Anyways, what I was saying is basically keep things stocked that you may be doing in bulk. So, for example, steel production, aluminum production, because right now I do have a lot of steel and I do have a lot of aluminum, but if I start to automate with it, 1600 and 2600 really isn't going to suffice for very long, given how much of this stuff you truly need. Steel primarily is the one because these steel plates, you'll end up using just a ton of them for fluid tank stuff, for hoppers. If you end up going that route, you don't have to. Trash cans is a very big one. Steel machine casings is a huge one. And of course, the silicone-based transitors, right? Because you need steel plates for those. Don't just think that batch crafting is going to get you through it. Yes, it will, and yes, it can, but later on, when you're like, oh, well, I really need to automate things using steel, but I don't feel comfortable doing that because I only have 2,000 steel, and we all know 2,000 in a Greg Tech modern industrialization type pack, not as much as what you would think it is. It's not as much as if I had 2,000 in vanilla Minecraft. If you have 2,000 in vanilla Minecraft of almost anything, you're pretty much good to go forever. Unless it's cobblestone, wood, the basics. But if I had 2,000 diamonds in a, vanilla playthrough, I would literally never care, worry, or question having enough, right? Sorry, I'm going to park this train back over here really quick. I really do love the create trains, and we are planning on taking this train for a larger build around the base. So let me pull it into port here, and we'll take a look-see. There. All right. So my plan for the train is to essentially, let's get it real high here, take it all the way around this whole circle you see here and loop it back into itself. Now the purpose will be obviously to carry us through the ages, so to speak. So we have, sorry about that. So we have all of the like steel and sort of early production up to digital over in this section. And then over here, obviously near the observation tower, we're going to have all of the space-based stuff. And then I'm assuming probably over in this area, we're going to have nuclear. And I don't know if we'll end up using this area. Hopefully we'll be pretty near the end of the pack at that point. So that's my plans with the train and with everything as far as where I'm going to be moving forward with. Hopefully some of these tips in this video helped you out. Sorry it was a bit here, there, and everywhere. Again, a lot of time has passed in between episodes, so it's kind of hard for me to keep up with what all is important, what all isn't important, and what I think is the most beneficial as far as assisting your playthrough and being a good piece of advice. I also apologize for all of the jumping, stuttering, cutting, splitting, whatever you want to call it in the video, because obviously that can be annoying whenever things become incoherent due to me stopping at one point, resuming 2 to 3 minutes later, and just simply forgetting what the hell I was talking about. Because that happens, obviously. It happens to the best of us, happens to the worst of us, happens to everyone. Forgetfulness is a bitch and a half, right? Anyways, I do hope you've enjoyed this video today. If there's any portion, piece, or part that I may not have explained, went over, or dove into, feel free to reach out, message me on YouTube and say, hey, can you explain that a bit better? How does this work? How does that work? Why is that set up the way it is? How are you doing X, Y, and Z? And of course, I will try to get back to you. Oh, I guess I didn't really show off this thing. This setup here is, well, this setup here is something that happened sheerly kind of by luck, because I was accepting my quest rewards and I managed to get this block here, which is the lightning rod. Now the lightning rod is really, really a special little piece here. So it's all the way over here. You have to get the implosion compressor and all that kind of stuff, which we're not to, because you need to go to route A, which is space, in order to go to Mars to get Ostrom to make the mixed blast-proof ingot. So the fact that I got a lightning rod out of, random quest rewards was really, really awesome, because the lightning rod can generate 256,000 energy per bolt with a maximum output rate of 2,000 per tick. Now, essentially what that means is whenever it starts to thunder, depending on how many iron fences up here, the chance will grow of our lightning rod being struck. Then it will transfer all of the power down the cable, which I burned through a lot of this because I didn't realize that the player charger over here, the wireless player charger, just runs infinitely. And this is bugged. No amount of redstone control actually does anything with this. Doesn't seem to, at least. It does start spinning and all that. Sure, cool. But it still uses the power irregardless. I've tested this earlier, and it does. It just constantly burns through the power. So, not a huge fan of that, but, or maybe it's working now. Hell, I don't know. But earlier, it didn't matter what redstone state I had this in, what state I had the lever in. It just was auto filling through the energy here, essentially. So we did drain a lot of our power that we had backed up over here, but it is a really good way of storing multiple million energy. EU, E, whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? So obviously for me, I kind of drained it all through the cable, which runs over to the player thing. But since then, I've disconnected it, and now I just have a simple solar panel charging the advanced wireless thing. And what the advanced wireless thing does is essentially keep our wireless crafting terminal charged so long as we're within this big blue box, which is obviously pretty large. So if we step in here, it can and will charge as it's being used. So yeah, that's pretty much it for that. This, again, lightning strikes it, and then it just transfers power down and in. Initially, we had both of these storage units all the way filled up, the cable all the way filled up, and about 2 million EU in the lightning rod. So it can hold a lot. The lightning rod itself can hold up to 100 million, which is insane, obviously. And then each storage unit can hold about 6 million. So we got roughly 112 million EU that we can store up just within this little tower here. So really, really beneficial as far as having a spare and extra power set up in case we ever need it, which so far we haven't. But yeah. So speaking of power, we're going to move on to the last topic of today's episode, which is going to be power production and what my ideas and plans are for moving forward. Right now, we have 2 of the advanced large steam boilers set up. Each one of these can produce about 1,000, I think it's 1,024 steam per tick, which is pretty good because that equates exactly over to 1,024 energy per tick, right? Because steam to energy is a 1-to-1 ratio. So essentially, we can make 2,000 EU per tick, right? That's fine. We're not getting anywhere near that still. We have about max output. I think we usually get close to like 600-700. So not even enough for one of these machines to be fully capped out. However, that being said, whenever we start getting into nuclear stuff and bigger, better, badder stuff towards the end, having power to just kind of dump into the nuclear reactor will be very beneficial, and this will make sense once we get into nuclear stuff, which is obviously quite a ways away. However, I do want to start setting ourselves up for that proper point, and I think that diesel power, using the boosted diesel over here, is actually going to be our best source of energy. Sure, steam is infinite and easy to go infinite with, but boosted diesel can do some pretty wild things as far as amounts go, right? So if we take a look, thought it was over here. Is it on the next page? Might be the next page. Nuclear age. Yeah, the large diesel generator. So this is what we're going to be attempting to use primarily for our power in the late game. It can generate up to 16,000 EU per tick. So right now we're producing about 2,000. This will produce 8 times the amount of power that we're currently producing. And the way that it does this is by taking liquid fuels, or fluid fuels rather. It doesn't have to be liquids, it can be gases as well. And then it burns based on the amount that you see here. Obviously, the highest one is going to be boosted diesel here. Creosote sits somewhere around 160, and boosted diesel is about 800. So from each millibucket of boosted diesel, we get 800 EU. We have 288,000. So I have my calculator on me somewhere. Let's see, calculator. 288,000 times 800. 2.3, is that million? 2.3 million or 2.3 billion? Is that 2.3 billion? E to the 8th. I don't know what that actually goes out to. But it's a lot, and that's all that really matters. So boosted diesel is going to be our primary power source in the future. However, it is going to be a matter of, can we produce this quick enough? And obviously, we're not producing diesel right now. We're not producing stainless steel drills on the automatic, which is what we'll need in order to get the shell, in order to keep everything going infinitely. Now, as far as creosote going, powering our current machines, that setup's actually really simple and becomes... what's the word I'm looking for? Trivial when you get to the, is it paralysis? It's not paralysis, right? It's not, surely not. Cause that's like a illness, isn't it? Paralysis? Anyways, when you get to the big oven, creating creosote becomes really easy because you just turn all of your wood, right? However you're producing it, you turn your logs into wood tar. Then you send that into a distillery, which makes creosote. And this is it. This is all the creosote maker that we have going on right now. My previous coke oven stuff, I've stopped using because I have enough coke and I don't have as much coal, so I kind of want to save it. So this isn't even turned on. Not even producing creosote whatsoever over here. Literally the only thing producing creosote is our oven. And it is powering and providing creosote for everything. We have this all the way backed up, all the way throughout the entire system. We have used a lot of fuel this episode here. But yeah, So the oven, don't think that it's not going to be enough creosote. I initially thought that. I was like, man, it's just not going to produce enough quick enough. But it really does, and it is obviously enough to keep everything powered up. So if you're in that weird middle, early-ish kind of game, and you're like, you know, I want to make sure my power is good to go, I cannot recommend the paralysis oven enough. And I hope I'm saying that correctly and not just talking about an illness that people have that's kind of like arthritis, which I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that. Any hoosers, again, if there's anything that I missed in this episode, please feel free to comment it down below. I know it kind of was a bit of here, there, and everywhere, but when you're doing a complex mod pack and only trying to do highlights, things can get a bit wonky, in my opinion. So, thanks again, everybody. We're going to try and keep this to a bit of a shorter episode, he says, as he nears an hour of recording time. But I know that with all the cuts and jumps that happen due to me having to pause the video, mute, all that kind of stuff, it should trim down to maybe like a 35, 40-minute video, something like that. I don't know. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. I hope you did enjoy. If so, please be sure to leave a like down below and comment in the comment section. We're nearing the end game. We're not nearing the end, but we're nearing the end game for this mod pack, which is really nice. I do and have been thinking about starting a new mod pack here recently, but I also have another video style, we'll call it, that will be coming out very soon, wherein I kind of get to scratch that itch without really over extending on the amount of time that I have to produce content with. So thanks again, everybody. Be sure to leave a like down below if you enjoyed the video. Comment in the comment section if you have any questions, tips, tidbits, or anything that may be useful to me, or if you have any questions that I might can answer for you. Of course, subscribe if you're new here. You want to see more awesome content from yours truly. Share this out with friends, family, strangers down the street, and random people you might meet. As per the usual, I do hope you all stay safe, stay awesome, and stay crafting. Until next time, you beautiful, beautiful people. Peace out.